I sat down at my desk, glanced at my watch, a few minutes before 5 p.m. In about an hour, I'd head home to start the weekend. I always looked forward to weekends, but this one was special. Tomorrow, Thursday, marked 18 years since I married Linda, and I couldn't wait to take her away for the weekend to have some wild fun at the lakeside cabin I'd booked. I took a photo of Linda from my desk and looked at it closely. It was a picture she gave me years ago, inscribed with, "The love of my life." By the way, Emmerich Thompson. Linda and I fell in love in college and got married right after graduation. She insisted we wait until our wedding night to have sex, saying it would make our honeymoon better. She was right. My parents were thrilled and gave me a check for $70,000 and the keys to a townhouse they rented out. "Just to get started," my dad said. This money, he explained, was the first installment of a $4 million trust fund set up shortly after I was born. I'd receive a similar amount every year. My mom passed away shortly after I was born. My dad never talked about her, and I didn't press him. About a year after her death, he remarried the woman I knew as Mom. I considered joining the military after high school, but was rejected because I had diabetes, managed through diet and pills. Despite this, I still played soccer and took martial arts classes. Linda and I went to college together. She wanted to be a teacher, and I aimed to follow my dad into business. Our plans changed when Linda got pregnant with our son Josh 6 months after our wedding. Linda had a tough delivery, and on the doctor's advice, she had her tubes tied afterward. She took time off college to care for Josh and returned after he started kindergarten. She got her teaching certificate and began working at a local school. Meanwhile, I graduated and went to work for Logan Industries as an accountant. I remember the day I told my dad about my job. "Logan Industries, right?" he asked. Logan Industries had been in business for almost 50 years and was a very well-established manufacturing and logistics company. They had a huge customer base across the country and an impressive portfolio with great potential for growth. "Yes," I told him, "they start with the fact that I work as an accountant. Good salary and benefits are amazing." "Fine, I'm proud of you, son," he said. "I hope everything works out for you." I remember being somewhat taken aback by the way he made his comment. I could tell that although he was proud of me, something else was bothering him. I wanted to ask him about this, but I restrained myself. My father wasn't the type to volunteer more information than necessary, and I knew pestering him about it would get me nowhere. The next 14 years were what you might call normal. We worked, came home, took care of our family, lather, rinse, repeat. My job didn't require any travel except for the occasional seminar, but we took time out for annual vacations, usually during the summer months when Linda didn't have to work. I stopped taking martial arts classes about 5 years after I got married due to lack of time. I think raising a child in addition to working and taking care of the home tends to lead to this. I didn't talk about my job very often, but my father suggested several times that I explore my options. I couldn't help but wonder why he suggested this, but I dropped the subject. Overall, Linda and I were happy. Of course, we had our ups and downs like every married couple, but overall everything was fine. Our personal life was fairly stable, but declined a bit as we got older. However, about a month ago, I began to notice some changes in Linda. At first, I chalked it up to the fact that school was over and she didn't have to go to work every day. She had periods when she became withdrawn and distant. A few times she got a little harsh with me. I couldn't understand what I had done and tried to talk to her about it. She simply waved me off with a wave of her hand before walking away. A little later, she returned, apologizing for her behavior. Around this time, I learned that I was being considered for the vice president position that had just opened up. I was told that I was one of 2 people applying for this position. I later learned that the other candidate being considered was Adam Williams. Adam was a good man who deserved a promotion, but I thought I was better suited for the job. I didn't tell anyone about the promotion, deciding to wait until I knew for sure one way or another, so I didn't think it had anything to do with it. Then it dawned on me. Everything in the house was changing. Josh had just graduated from high school and received an appointment to the United States Military Academy at West Point. In fact, he was on his way there now. Perhaps I thought she was worried about the idea of becoming lonely. That's when I came up with the idea for a weekend away to celebrate our anniversary. I decided to surprise her, hoping that it would bring her out of her stupor. The phone on my desk rang at 4:15, bringing me back to reality. I picked up the phone and was greeted by the voice of my secretary. "Mr. Thompson," she said, "Mr. Henderson just called and said you need to meet him as soon as possible." "Thank you, Sarah," I said. Jacob Henderson III, or Jake as he liked to be called, was the CEO of Logan, and when he demanded your presence, you didn't keep him waiting. I decided that he wanted to talk to me about the promotion. I stood up, looked in the bathroom mirror, straightened my tie, and headed to the elevator. On the way up, I pulled my smartphone out of my pants pocket and set the audio recording function to record for an hour just in case. I always did this when I went into meetings for later review, just in case I missed something important. I put the phone back in my pocket just as the elevator stopped. I got off on the 12th floor, the floor that housed all of the company's top executives, and headed to Henderson's suite, which occupied most of one end of the floor. His assistant, an attractive brunette named Barbara Harris, looked up at me as I entered. "Mr. Henderson is expecting you, Mr. Thompson," she said with a slight grin. I wondered what caused that smirk. "Come on in." I nodded my head and opened the double doors to Henderson's main office. "Oh, Rick, come in," he said with a smile, inviting me inside. I walked in and sat down in the chair he indicated, which stood directly opposite the sofa and coffee table set up at one end of the office. "Get Mr. Thompson something to drink, Harvey," he ordered, looking at the large man in the suit. I knew that Harvey Smith was one of Jake's personal guards, and I wondered where the other guard was. Henderson always kept 2 guards with him for some reason that escaped me. I've heard rumors over the years, but none of them have ever been confirmed. Harvey poured some bourbon into a glass and handed it to me. I didn't drink very often, but Harvey knew that I preferred straight bourbon, just like my father. I accepted the glass and thanked him. Harvey nodded his head but didn't say anything or even smile. Come to think of it, I don't think I've ever seen this man smile. Henderson walked over to the sofa and sat down. I noticed that he had taken off his jacket and rolled up the sleeves of his shirt. Henderson was a large man with a barrel chest and muscles. I thought he looked good for being over 50 years old. He took a sip of his drink, then set it on the coffee table and regarded me for a moment before speaking. "Go on," he said with a smile. "Drink something. It won't kill you if you relax a little." I took a test sip of the bourbon before placing the glass on the coaster he had on the coffee table. "Thank you," I said. "What can I do for you today, Mr. Henderson?" Jake smiled before saying anything. "That's what I like best about you, Rick," he said. "Always so polite, always so kind. I was telling Barbara a couple of days ago that I don't think I've ever seen you worry about anything. By the way, how are things going on the home front? Is everything okay between you and your wife?" I nodded my head. "Yes, everything is fine," I said. "Our son just left for West Point, so we're adjusting to that. I was planning on taking Linda out this weekend to celebrate our 18th anniversary." "Married for 18 years?" Jake asked. "Congratulations. Well, I didn't call you here to mess with you. It's not that I don't like you. I like you. I wanted to talk to you about my upcoming promotion. As you know, this only applies to you and Williams. There are only 1 or 2 things the board needs before making a decision." "I see," I said. "And what does the board need?" "They want to know how flexible you are," Jake said. "How do you react to stressful situations? How far are you willing to go to achieve the company goals? Do you understand that when you become a manager, your workday will not end at 5 as it is now?" I figured that was true, at least up to a point, I said. Surely the board looked at my reviews, looked at my personal file. "Yes, of course they did," Jake said, "but they need more. They have to see for themselves how you can react under fire, so to speak." "Sorry, Mr. Henderson, but I'm afraid I don't quite understand," I said. He smiled and took another sip of bourbon. "You will understand this, my boy," he said. "Tell me, how strong is your marriage?" Very solid, Mr. Henderson, I said, taking another sip of my drink. Why are you asking? Glad to hear it. You see, I'm afraid you'll have to cancel your plans for the weekend, he said. If your marriage is as strong as you say, I'm sure your wife will understand. He looked at Harvey and nodded slightly. Harvey walked to the other door, opened it, and came back to stand behind my chair. I felt a little uncomfortable about this and wondered what was going to happen. Then I saw another guard, Bill Jackson, come through the door, but he was not alone. Linda was with him. He led her to Henderson and stepped back. I was shocked by what I saw. Linda was wearing a very short dress with an open back. The front of her dress was open all the way to her waist, and it was clear that she wasn't wearing a bra. The hem of the dress fell just a couple of inches below her butt. She looked in my direction but did not seem to recognize me. I looked at her face and saw her eyes. She appeared to be drugged, and I thought I saw something white in one nostril. Linda, I said, what are you doing here? Why are you dressed like that? She looked at me but didn't answer. Her eyes appeared glassy, and it was obvious that she had been drugged. I looked back at Henderson. What does all of this mean? I asked. Why is she here in this outfit? She's clearly drugged. What did you give her? He laughed at my question. Come on, Rick, he said. You are a clever boy. What do you think she's doing here? And yes, I gave her something I prepared myself. Makes them hot, wet, and pliable. Keeps them in this state for a very long time. I even gave her 3 times the usual dose. He nodded to Bill, who untied the strip of fabric from the back of her neck. When he released her, her breasts were exposed. Henderson reached out and pinched one of her breasts. Linda didn't answer. I started to get up but found that I could not move my arms or legs. What the hell? I thought. And then it dawned on me. Harvey had also slipped something into my drink. But what? Henderson looked at me with an evil grin on his face. He looked back at Bill, who was standing behind Linda, and nodded his head. Bill unzipped her dress and it fell to the floor. Apart from her high heels, Linda was now completely naked. She still didn't move. I prefer my women to be shaved, he said. Aren't you? She's not your woman, I said angrily. Oh, now I see that you are starting to worry, he said, and we're just getting started. He extended his hand and ran his finger over her butt. Get the hell away from my wife, I blurted out in rage as Harvey held me back with both hands. Henderson looked at me and laughed. Or what? He asked threateningly. Will you kick my ass? If I haven't made a mistake in my calculations, you can't even move right now. Get away from her, you son of a bitch, I growled. Henderson laughed again and unzipped his pants. He dropped his trousers and boxers and motioned for Bill to come over. The big man pushed Linda to her knees in front of Henderson. That's when she began to satisfy him, and then they had sex. Her eyes remained glazed over as she moaned in pleasure. It was as if nothing else mattered to her, and nothing else existed in her universe at this point. I was shaking with rage, fighting to free myself from Harvey, but I still couldn't move my arms. I looked back at Henderson. I'm going to kill you, you son of a bitch, I shouted. Henderson just looked at me with a smirk. Well, is it really possible to talk to your own flesh and blood like that? He asked. Such language, and in front of your dear sweet wife. She won't be my wife for long, I said angrily. And what do you mean by flesh and blood? Oh, you mean no one ever told you? He asked. Told me what? I answered. How did my father knock up your biological mother in front of her husband? Henderson said with a grin. That's right, Thompson. You and I are half-brothers. That's not true, I said, shocked. Why are you doing it? Actually, for several reasons, he said. Firstly, because I am the general director and I can do whatever I want. Call it executive privilege if you want. Secondly, I always wanted to cuckold my younger half-brother. You don't think I brought you on board because of your grades or abilities, do you? You mean, I began. That's right, Thompson, he said. I knew your biological mother's husband when he worked here for my father. At that time, I was a young man who had not even finished high school. I worked here during the summers and weekends, mostly in the post office. I worked my way up the ranks, and now I occupy the position that my father once had. I kept an eye on you, and when I saw that you graduated from college, I made it clear that if you applied for a job here, you would be hired. Have you been planning this all along? I asked. Of course, he said. I call it the long game. I knew this time would come. It was just a matter of time. And now your ass belongs to me, and your wife belongs to me. This brings me to the third reason I do this. I intend to return what was taken from my father. What do you mean, taken from your father? I asked. I've never met your father. No, but the man you called Dad did it, Henderson said. He sued my father and the company. Where do you think the money for your trust fund came from? Now I intend to take back what is mine, and I'm going to take it out of your wife's ass. You're sick, you know that? I asked. He shrugged. Maybe, he said. It is what it is. So here's how it's going to work, Rick. You are not going to divorce your wife. She will need extra money to support her new lifestyle. As I said, she belongs to me now. She will become my personal corporate sex toy, and you will never touch her again. She should be available to me upon request, 24/7. In fact, I'm taking her to Miami for a couple of days to present her to the board of directors. They also showed interest in her. Don't worry, I'll bring her back. Maybe a little shabby. You'll never get away with this, I said. He laughed. I've already done it, he said, and there's not a damn thing you can do to stop me. He looked at Bill and nodded his head. Bill stood in front of me and grinned. It's nothing personal, Mr. Thompson, he said. I've always liked you. I'm just doing my job. With these words, he hit me hard in the face. I saw stars and finally lost consciousness after the third blow. I woke up and immediately realized that I was in a hospital room. I heard buzzing and beeping sounds from the instruments attached to me and saw the plastic IV that was in my arm. My mouth was dry and my head hurt terribly. I looked around and saw my dad sitting on the chair next to my bed. He heard me move and looked at me. He looked like he hadn't slept in forever. He saw that I was trying to speak and called the nurse. A young woman in a nurse's uniform entered the room and checked my vital signs before giving me a piece of ice to suck on. She gave me another one after the first one melted. After eating a couple more cubes, I licked my lips and tried to speak. How long? I asked. You've been here about 3 days, Dad said, as the nurse left the room to call the doctor. 3 days? I asked in shock. That means it's Monday, said my father. I got a call from the hospital late on Friday evening. They said you were dumped in front of the emergency room. You haven't been home since then. What happened to you, son? Later, I said, seeing the doctor enter my room. Good afternoon, Mr. Thompson. I'm Dr. Parker, he said. I'm glad to see you with us again. How do you feel? Like I was run over by a truck, I said. Everything hurts. I have no doubt about it, he said. You've been pretty beat up. Nothing is broken, but you have a couple of bruised ribs and a small bruise. We were concerned that you might have had a concussion. He examined me and made notes on my chart. We're going to take some x-rays, and I want to keep you one more night for observation. If everything goes well, we can send you home tomorrow. I took it upon myself to call the police, my dad said. It was very clear to me that you were under attack, and we have a responsibility to report possible criminal activity. I know they want to talk to you. Do you think you can handle this? Yes, doctor, I said, most definitely. Okay, he said. I'll call them, and maybe they'll be here by the time you get back. He waved to the nurse, and she called for the x-ray technician. A few minutes later, I was taken to radiology for an x-ray. When I returned to my room, a man in a suit was talking to my father. After I settled in, the man in the suit pulled out a set of ID cards and introduced himself. Mr. Thompson, I'm Detective Ryan Blackwell, he said. Can you tell us how this happened? Yes, I can, I told him, taking a sip of water. I told him everything I could, then I remembered my phone. Did you find my phone? I asked my father. Yes, he said. Your mother brought the charger and plugged it into the outlet. I thought you might need this. He turned off the phone, which was lying on the table next to my bed, and handed it to me. I noticed there were a few text messages from a couple of numbers I didn't recognize and decided to check them later. I found the audio recording I had recorded and played it back for the detective. We could hear everything, including the blows on my body. I paid special attention to what happened after my beating. "Okay, get him out of here," we heard Henderson say to the two guards. "Take him out the back door and take him to the hospital. If anyone asks, just say that's how you found him. Got it?" "Got it, boss," I heard Bill's voice. We heard movement, probably from the guards who were dragging me. Then we heard them talking as they pushed me into the back seat of the car. "Careful," Harvey said. "I don't want to get blood on the seats." "I'm trying, but he's such a son of a bitch," Bill said. "Aren't they all like that?" Harvey said, laughing. We heard the door slam, then the recording ended. "We have video from the hospital security system," Ryan said. "According to this, they drove up, opened the door, and threw you into the parking lot before driving away. A couple of EMTs saw you lying there and took you inside. We were able to see the car's license plate. It's registered to Logan Industries. I called your HR department on Monday morning to let them know where you were, and they told me that Henderson already said you'd be on sick leave for a week." "Dad said, any news from Linda?" I asked. Dad shook his head. "No, son," he said. "None. I've been trying to call you at home and on her cell phone ever since I got the call from the hospital. I left voicemails but never heard from her." "She's probably still in Miami," I said. "God only knows what they're doing to her." "I will put her on the wanted list, a bulletin on all counts," Ryan said. "Do you have a recent photograph of her?" "Yes, there is," I said, pulling out my photograph. "Okay," he said. "Send this to me along with a copy of that audio recording. I will send the photo to the NYPD and ask them to do the same. I will also issue a warrant for the arrest of Henderson and his thugs and forward it to the NYPD. I assume you want us to press charges?" "Absolutely," I said. "Okay," he said. "Then we'll figure it out ourselves, Mr. Thompson. You just relax and let the professionals do their job, okay?" "Okay, Detective," I said. "Thank you." "Well, be in touch," Ryan said. "We may have some questions later." He pulled out a business card and handed it to me. "Call me if you remember anything else." After he left, I looked at my father. "Is what Henderson said true?" I asked. "Yes and no," said Dad. "It's true that his father had his way with your biological mother, and it's true that he made me watch, but it turned out that your mother was already pregnant when this happened. She just didn't know it at the time." "What happened?" I asked. "Well, after that happened, I filed for divorce," he said. "She kept telling me it was just a mistake, that she still loved me. You know, all that usual nonsense, but I wasn't going to hear it. I moved into the guest bedroom and refused to have anything to do with her. I also filed an alienation of affection lawsuit against Henderson and the company for allowing this to happen. In those days, I could still do it. Soon after, she found out she was pregnant, and the court forced us to wait until you were born before moving forward." "Could you do a DNA test?" I asked. "You were born in 1984, said Dad. "This was before they used DNA to establish paternity. We took blood tests, but they were inconclusive. It turns out that you, me, your biological mother, and Henderson have the same blood type. I won't bore you with all the details, but things in the house only got worse. Your biological mother began to abuse alcohol and drugs. She died of an overdose about 6 months after you were born." "Damn," I said. "The lawsuit against Henderson and Logan continued, and we settled it out of court," my father said. "That's where I got the money to start your trust fund. As part of the agreement, I agreed not to disclose any details about this case. That's why I couldn't tell you anything. About a year after all this, I met Patricia. She fell in love with you the moment she saw you for the first time and insisted on adopting you after we got married. She could not have children of her own, but in her opinion, you were and remain her son." "So how did you know that I was really your son?" I asked. "Do you remember that motorcycle accident you had when you were 16? He asked. I remembered it too well. One day I was riding on the back of Jimmy Reardon's bike. He was usually very careful, but that day he hit a slippery spot on the road, and we fell. Fortunately, we were both wearing helmets, and this saved our lives. However, I was still pretty beat up." "Yes, I remember," I said. "Well, I asked the hospital to do a DNA test," he said. "I just had to find out the truth one way or another. The test came back and showed that there is more than a 99% chance that I am your father." This means that your biological mother was already pregnant with you when Henderson had her. Well, as far as I'm concerned, you are my father, no matter what any test shows, I told him, making him smile. What happened to Henderson? I asked. He died of a stroke around the time you went to college, Dad said. His son took a step forward and became general director. I had hoped that the younger Henderson had learned from his father's mistakes, but it appears I was wrong. That's why you weren't particularly enthusiastic about me going there to work, isn't it? I asked. He nodded his head. Yes, he said. I wanted to tell you, but I couldn't. I prayed to God that I had this now. It's not your fault, Dad, I said. I just don't know how Linda could fall for his crap after all these years. It just doesn't make any sense. Who knows, said Dad. It looks like she was drugged and out of control. She may have been drugged, but something just doesn't sound right, I said. First of all, what was she doing there and wearing this dress? Just at that moment, we heard a knock on the door. Yes, I shouted. The door opened and Barbara poked her head into the room. Can I come in? She asked meekly. Of course, Barbara, I said. Come in. What do you want? In her hands, she held a vase full of flowers and a large card. I wanted to bring this, she said. Everyone in the office chipped in and bought it for you. They also signed the card. Thank you, Barbara, I said. Put the flowers over there, I added, pointing to the nightstand next to the bed. She handed me the card and placed the flowers on the nightstand. Then she turned to face me. I want you to know that I'm really sorry about all of this, she said. Did you know what Henderson was planning to do? I asked. I knew he was planning something with your wife, she said. I didn't know about this, she added, pointing at me. What happened? I asked. That morning, he gave me a company credit card and told me to pick up your wife, she said. He said that she was waiting for me. He told me to take her out and buy her the shortest, sexiest dress we could find and take her downstairs to get her hair done. He also insisted that she wax her bikini area, a complete Brazilian wax. I had a pretty good idea of what he meant. This is not the first time he has done this. So your boss is using you to train his little girls? Dad asked. Barbara's face turned red and she had the good sense to look down. Did you know that he drugged her? He drugs all the women he sleeps with, Mr. Thompson, she said. He loves to experiment. Has he ever used it on you? Dad asked. She nodded her head. One day, she said, he gave me just a little bit. He said it was only a quarter of the dose. Made me last an hour or so. Do you know how much he gave my wife? I asked. She shook her head. No, I don't know, she said. He said he gave Linda 3 times the usual dose, I said. Her eyes widened, and she brought her hands to her face. Oh, my God, she said. I had no idea. Your poor wife must have been climbing the walls for hours. I bet she didn't even know you were in the room. This stuff really does good for you. When I walked into your office, you knew what was going to happen, didn't you? I asked. She nodded her head. I knew, she said, but I didn't know he was going to treat you so cruelly, honestly. Do you know where Henderson and my wife are now? I asked. Last I heard, they're still in Miami, she said. Would you agree to talk to the police? Dad asked. I will do everything in my power to help, she said. She looked back at me with tears in her eyes. I'm really, really sorry about this, Mr. Thompson. Just one thing, Barbara, I said. What is this? She asked. Did my wife know what was going to happen? I asked. She nodded her head. I'm pretty sure she knew that, Mr. Thompson, she said. I know that Mr. Henderson has spoken to her several times over the last month or so, and he has asked her out to dinner several times, long lunches. I don't know if they did anything or not, and he never told me. But do you think they did it? I asked. I would say it's very likely, but I really don't know, she said. You often do things like this for Henderson, don't you? Dad asked. Quite often, she said quietly. So you approve of his actions? He asked. She shook her head. You don't understand, she said. I'm a single mother with a special needs child, and Mr. Henderson pays me quite well for my help and my silence. Well, your silence is what got my son into the hospital this time, young lady, he he said, starting to lose his temper. She backed away as he glared at her. Honestly, Mr. Thompson, she said, I didn't know they were going to harm your son. I would have warned him if I had known. Dad leaned back in his chair and looked at her without saying anything. Barbara, I'll have the police detective contact you about this, I said. I suggest you be available and cooperate fully. You understand? She nodded her head. I understand, Mr. Thompson, she said. Okay, I said, and tell everyone that I thanked you for the flowers and the card. You'll do so, she said, wiping a tear from her eye. Once again, I apologize. With these words, she turned and left the room. After the door closed, I turned and looked at my father. That explains something, I said. Linda has been acting a little strange since school ended. At first, I thought it was just because Josh had gone to West Point. Well, get to the bottom of it, he said. There was another knock on the door, and a hospital orderly entered, wheeling a cart full of food. Dad smiled and stood up. Looks like it's time for dinner, he said. That means I better get home before your mother sends the National Guard to find me, he joked. Take care of yourself, son. Get some rest, and we'll see you in the morning. Thank you, Dad, I said. Tell your mom hello from me, and be sure to tell her that I love her. I'll do it, son, he said. And by the way, I love you too. He smiled as we bumped fists, and then left the room. The orderly smiled at Dad as he left, then placed my food on the tray. It actually smelled pretty good, and I was a little hungry since it had been a few days since I last ate. I wolfed down my food, enjoying the meatloaf and mashed potatoes. I especially liked the mushroom sauce. It wasn't up to Mom's or Linda's standards, but it did the job. I even liked the broccoli, which I don't usually eat. I had finished my pudding cup and was sipping my coffee when I decided to check the text messages on my phone. There were 4 messages in total, and each of them had a video attached. The first message, dated later that Friday, simply read, "Enjoy. I bet you wish you weren't here." I didn't recognize the number and opened the video. I immediately regretted doing it. The video began with Linda standing in front of a group of grinning men wearing the same short dress she was wearing the last time I saw her. I recognized these men as members of the board of directors. This would only add millions to the lawsuit, I thought to myself. She stood silently as one of the men reached out, tore off her dress, and threw it on the floor. She began to satisfy the man. I saw that Linda's eyes were still glazed over, and I knew that she was under the influence of what Henderson had given her. I didn't know if it was because of what he gave her on Friday afternoon or if he gave her another dose. Luckily, the video ended because I felt like I was going to throw up. Gathering my courage, I opened the next message, dated early Saturday morning, and played the video. And again, I regretted doing this. In this video, Linda was having fun with several men at the same time. The third video, from late Saturday night, showed Linda lying on her back with her legs spread wide open, and several men had sex with her. The fourth video was different. The video, dated early Sunday morning, showed Henderson and Linda looking directly into the camera. I noticed that her eyes were bloodshot, and there were large dark bags underneath them. I wondered how long they had been tormenting her, I thought. Henderson spoke first. "I hope you liked what you saw, cuckold," he said. "This is your wife's new life, so you better get used to it." He turned to Linda before speaking again. "Tell that bastard who I am, honey," he said. "Jake Henderson is my master," she said in a voice devoid of emotion. "That's true," he said. "And what's your new job?" Henderson asked. "I am my master's sex toy," she said. "I do sex with whomever he says, whenever he says, and however he says, as much as he says." "Very good," said Jake. "And tell that bastard that he will never touch you again." "You cuckold," Linda said, pointing her finger at the camera. "You'll never be able to touch me again." Henderson laughed at that before looking into the camera. "And remember, don't rock the boat, or the next time I ask Harvey and Bill to talk to you, you might not wake up. See you later, cuckold. Bye." This video ends. I experienced a whole range of emotions. Hatred, anger, sadness, disappointment. I couldn't believe what I just saw and heard. As far as I could tell, he was able to get her. I looked at the wedding ring on my finger. It no longer had any meaning to me, so I took it off and threw it on the nightstand. Maybe, I thought, I could sell it and get a few dollars for it at a pawn shop. At that moment, I had no doubt that I would divorce Linda. I really didn't care if Jake liked it or not. I also intended to make him pay, but how? Alienation of affection lawsuits were possible when my father filed for divorce, but no more. I wanted to kill that bastard, but honestly, he wasn't worth going to jail for. I called Ryan and told him about the videos and Henderson's threats. He asked me to forward them to him and said he would contact me. I followed his instructions and turned off my phone. I thought about calling Linda, but I decided that would be a futile exercise. I put my phone on the nightstand and watched some TV to take my mind off what I had just seen. Eventually, I fell asleep and dreamed of happier times when I had a loving and faithful wife. The next morning, I woke up to the sounds of nurses in my room checking my vital signs and looking at the monitors. 2 of them took me to the radiology department and took some more x-rays and then took me back to my room. After they got me back on my feet, the orderly brought breakfast. Dr. Parker came into my room shortly after I had finished my bacon and egg breakfast and told me the good news. "Everything has gone well," Dr. Parker said, "and you can go home. I'll write a prescription for the pain and give you a series of instructions. The discharge paperwork will take about an hour, so why don't you call your parents and ask them to come pick you up?" "Thanks, Doc," I said. "I'll do that." After he left, I called my parents and told them the good news. About an hour later, they appeared in my room. Mom hugged me. She looked at me, and I saw tears in her eyes. "Oh, Rick, I'm so sorry this happened to you," she said. "How do you feel?" "I've been better, Mom," I told her. "Well, I made some of my lasagna for you and put it in the oven to keep it warm," she said. I really liked my mother's lasagna. It was the most delicious, with several layers of cheese and mushroom and meat filling. It was the most delicious food in the world. I looked at her and smiled. "Thank you, Mom," I said. "I appreciate it. Your lasagna always brings a smile to my face." "I'm glad, son," she said. "Your father told me what happened, and I feel so bad. I have every reason to throw this woman over my knee and whip her ass." Dad and I looked at each other and laughed. I had no doubt that she would have thrown Linda over her knee if she had been here. "So, is there any news?" Dad asked. I told him about the videos and Henderson's threat. "Video?" Mom asked. "Trust me, Mom, you really don't want to see them," I said. "They are worse than bad." "I understand. You'll need the name of a good divorce lawyer," Dad said. "Yes," I said. "I don't see any way to forget what she did, which she's probably still doing. I also need to tell Josh. He will be heartbroken." "Okay, I'll make a few calls," Dad said. Just then a nurse came into the room and handed me discharge papers and instructions. They insisted that I ride in a wheelchair, so the nurse sat me down and wheeled me around while Mom and Dad walked next to me. We got to the loading dock and I climbed into the back seat. Dad drove us back to my house, stopping at a pharmacy along the way so I could buy my pain pills. I noticed my car was parked in the driveway when we pulled up. "Your mom and I picked up your car from Logan on Saturday," Dad said. "Linda's car is still in the garage." We stopped and entered the house. I looked around and realized how empty the place seemed without Linda. I smelled lasagna in the oven, and it cheered me up a bit. "I hope you don't mind, but yesterday afternoon I took the liberty of freshening things up a little," Mom said. "It was starting to get a little musty." "I don't mind at all, Mom," I told her. "Thank you for all your help. I think I can handle all of this." Just at that moment, we noticed a dark sedan parked in front of the house. I saw Ryan get out on the driver's side and another man in a suit get out on the passenger side. I opened the door and invited them in. "Detective Blackwell," I said, "please come inside." I held the door open as the 2 men came inside. Ryan shook my hand as he entered. I introduced him to my parents, and they shook hands. "Can I get you 2 something to drink?" Mom asked. "Coffee? Coca-Cola?" Ryan shook his head. "No, ma'am, but thank you anyway," Ryan said. He turned to the other man. "Mr. Thompson, this is Detective Hawthorne from the NYPD Homicide Department." I was shocked for a moment when I realized this, but eventually extended my hand. Hawthorne accepted it. I invited them to sit down, and we all made ourselves as comfortable as we could. "Homicide?" I asked. Hawthorne nodded his head and held out a photograph. "Can you identify the woman in this photograph?" he asked. I looked up and saw Linda's face, but her eyes were closed and her skin had a sickly tint. "That sounds like my wife, Linda," I said. "But she was alive early Sunday morning. I have a video." "Did your wife have any marks or tattoos?" asked Hawthorne. "Yes, she had a tattoo of a small dolphin on her upper right thigh," I said. "She did it on a dare 15 years ago." Hawthorne looked at Ryan and nodded his head before looking back at me. "I'm sorry to tell you, Mr. Thompson, but it appears that your wife may have been murdered," he said. "Killed?" I asked. "How? When?" "That's what we're trying to determine, Mr. Thompson," he said. "The coroner is still examining her, but his initial assessment was that she died of a massive heart attack." "That wouldn't make her death a murder, would it?" I asked. "Well, her body was found in a shallow grave in the middle of Central Park yesterday afternoon," Hawthorne said. "In my experience, this usually indicates murder. We're still waiting on toxicology test results, and maybe that will shed some light on what happened." "What can you tell us?" I told them both the whole story. Ryan listened and took notes, even though he had heard it all before. I pulled out my phone and let them listen to the audio recording, then I played the video for them. Mom didn't hear or see anything and started crying. Dad took her out of the room so I could talk to the detectives alone. When they finished watching the video, I told them what Barbara told me. They both made notes and looked at each other before turning to me. "That explains the bruises and general condition of Mrs. Thompson's body," said Hawthorne. He turned to me. "This woman, Barbara Harris, is she working today?" "As far as I know," I said. "We need to talk to her," Hawthorne said to Ryan, who nodded his head in agreement. He turned to me again. "What can you tell me about the drugs Henderson mentioned? Is this the so-called super ecstasy?" he asked. "Not much, just what Barbara told me and what I saw," I said. "Doc said that what they used on me was already out of my body." "What about Henderson and his goons?" Ryan asked. "It's one of those things we were hoping you could tell us," Ryan said. "Henderson's corporate jet took off from Miami last night. According to the flight plan filed by its pilot, they were returning here, but there is no record of the plane landing here." "Do you know where else he could have gone?" "Logan has branches all over the country," I said. "He could be anywhere." "Great," Hawthorne said, looking at Ryan. "We will need to get the FAA involved as well as the FBI." "I have a contact at the local FAA office," Ryan said. "We can go there after we execute a search warrant on Logan." Hawthorne nodded his head. "What is going to happen?" I asked. "If what you're telling us is true, this could become a federal case, because Henderson took your wife across state lines," Ryan said. "We're looking at several charges against him, including murder and possibly kidnapping." "In the meantime," said Hawthorne, "my men will complete their work and free your wife's body. This may take several days. We will also detain the people in this video and see what we can show them." I nodded my head in understanding. Ryan looked at Hawthorne before speaking. "I'd like to speak to Mr. Thompson alone, if you don't mind," he said. Hawthorne looked at me and nodded his head. "Of course, I understand," he said. "I still need to make a couple of calls. I'll be right outside." He looked at me before continuing. "I'm really sorry about all this, Mr. Thompson," he told me. "Thank you, Detective," I said, shaking his hand. After he left, Ryan turned back to me. "Mr. Thompson, Rick," he began, "I wanted to talk to you a little about what happened to your wife, and I wanted to do it in private." "I appreciate it, Ryan," I said. "I'll spare you the gory details," Ryan said. "But from what I've read and seen, her last 48 hours were absolute hell. I spoke to a medical examiner in the East, and he confirmed my suspicions. I don't believe your wife agreed with what was done to her. I believe she was brutally attacked. She was used and abused by a bunch of power-mad animals." "Look, Ryan, I understand what you're trying to do here, and I appreciate it," I said. "I really understand, but the truth is that Linda and Henderson dated for a month before this happened. I don't know exactly what happened between them, but I have a pretty good idea. Linda could have stopped all of this any time before last Friday, but she didn't. I don't know why she did what she did, and now I'll never know." "I understand," Ryan said quietly. He pulled out a business card from his pocket and handed it to me. "I think you should consult Dr. Harmon. She's one of the best in the business. Call her, okay?" "I'll do that. Thank you," I said. "I'm worried that Henderson's thugs will come back for you," he said. "I would assign a couple of officers to you, but I'm afraid we simply don't have the manpower for this. However, I will order the dispatcher to double patrols in your area. Do you have a gun?" "No," I said. He nodded his head. "Okay," he said. "Then always keep your windows and doors closed and locked. If you suspect anything, call 911 immediately." "I'll do that, Ryan," I said. Just at that moment, Hawthorne returned to the house. "I just got off the phone with your partner, Johnson," he said. "He is wanted throughout the country and also received search warrants and is waiting for us." Ryan nodded his head and stood up. "Well, be in touch, Rick," Ryan said, shaking my hand. Hawthorne extended his hand. "I'm sorry for your loss, Mr. Thompson," he said. "Thank you, Detective," I said. After they left, my parents came back and sat down. "Are you going to be okay, son?" Dad asked. "I think so, Dad," I said. "I have a couple more calls to make, and I'm looking forward to them." In many ways, this was true. I needed to tell Josh what happened to his mother, and I also needed to call Linda's parents. "Okay, if you need anything, call us, okay?" Dad asked. "I'll do that, Dad, thanks," I said. We exchanged hugs, and I watched them leave. I called Josh on his cell phone and left a message. I thought it might be a while before he called me back. I definitely wasn't looking forward to the next call. Linda's father, Bill Nelson, was a retired Marine colonel. He was a highly decorated combat veteran who earned the nickname Bloody Bill during a tour in Afghanistan. I never knew all the details, but from what I heard, he allegedly killed several Taliban fighters armed only with a knife. I saw him in uniform several times, and the man had more ribbons and medals than I had ever seen on a military man in my life. He and Linda's mother, Alice, moved into the country house several years ago after he left the Army. The colonel, as we all called him, didn't hurt anyone, and I admit I was a little nervous telling him that his only child was now dead. Luckily, he and I got along well, and he insisted that I call him Dad. I counted to 10 and dialed the number. "Nelson Residence," I heard Bill's voice when he picked up the phone. "Dad, it's me, Rick," I said. "Are you okay, son?" he asked. "You sound like someone just took all your cookies." "No, Dad, it's not like that," I said. "I just returned home from the hospital and found out that Linda is dead." "Dead?" he asked in shock. "Hospital? What were you doing in the hospital? Is that where she died? What the hell happened?" "It's a little difficult," I said. "Difficult?" he asked. "What do you mean, difficult?" I gave him the Reader's Digest version, and he thought for a moment. I could almost hear the gears grinding in his head as he processed it all. After a few moments, he spoke. "We will be there at 1600, he said. "It's 4 p.m. for you civilian types." "I know, Dad," I said, laughing. "And make sure you have fresh coffee ready," he said. "I'll do that," I said. We ended the conversation, and I sat back in my chair, thinking about everything that had happened. Suddenly, the full realization of what had happened hit me, and I began to sob. I felt like I had lost everything that meant anything to me. My marriage had obviously broken down for some time, and I just didn't know it. And now, the only woman I've ever truly loved is gone too. As much as I hated what she did, I didn't want her to die. As for Henderson, it was a completely different matter. I got up and ate some of my mom's lasagna. This has always made me feel better in the past. It helped this time, too. After eating, I cleaned everything up and walked around the house, thinking about my life together with Linda. Every nook and cranny of this place held memories for me. There was no way I could stay in this house. I decided that as soon as this was all over, I would sell the place and find something smaller. I found Linda's phone on the nightstand, still plugged into the charger. I decided to see if there was anything there that could give me a clue as to why she did what she did. Her phone was locked, but I knew the 4-digit code she used and entered it. Of course, it happened right now. I saw that her phone had received several calls from Henderson and several from Barbara's work number. The latter was done that Friday morning. I looked through her text messages and saw a conversation with Henderson from a couple of months ago, but there really wasn't much context, and they didn't say much in their messages. For all I knew, they could be talking about the weather. I also looked at her emails, but again, there was nothing there that raised any suspicions. I turned off the phone and put it back on the bedside table. Looking at the time, I realized that it was already 3:45 p.m. I had no idea how much time I wasted on Linda's phone. I knew how punctual the Colonel was, so I went to the kitchen and made fresh coffee, strong just the way he liked it. The doorbell rang just as the digital clock on the coffee pot showed 4 p.m. I knew it was the Colonel, so I opened the door and invited him and Alice inside. "Damn it, son, didn't anyone ever teach you to duck?" asked the Colonel, seeing my face. "My father tried, but I don't think I ever fully figured it out," I said, half-jokingly. "Come in." As they entered the house, another car pulled into the driveway and stopped. I saw a tall, lanky guy get out of the car and walk toward the door. "I hope you don't mind," Bill said. "After what you told me, I took the liberty of calling for reinforcements." By this time, the tall man was already in the house with a laptop bag on his shoulder. He was carrying 2 more bags, and I wondered what was going on. Bill turned to the man. "Ron, this is my son-in-law, Rick Thompson," he said. "Rick, this is Ron Wiseman. We served together in the Corps." "Nice to meet you, Mr. Wiseman," I said, shaking his hand. "Please, call me Ron," he said. I looked at the Colonel. "Ron and his wife have some experience with jerks like Henderson," he said. "Also, he has a certain skill set that I think will come in handy." "About what?" I asked. "What kind of skills?" "I'm an accountant by training," said Ron. "Accountant?" I asked. Ron smiled as he set his bags down on the floor. "Well, I'm a little more than that," he said. "I'm doing some work for a special task force, and I happen to have access to information that, from what the Colonel said, will be very useful." "I see," I said. "Well, sit down and I'll go get us all some coffee." Alice joined me in the kitchen, and we returned with 4 large cups of coffee. The Colonel liked it hot, fresh, black, and strong. Alice handed him the cup, and he took a tentative sip before placing it on the table. "Not bad, Rick," he said. "Thank you. Well, why don't you bring us all up to speed?" I told them all about what happened up until Ryan and Hawthorne left the house earlier. "You say you have video recordings?" asked the Colonel. "Yes," I said. "They're pretty unsightly." "I'd still like to see them," he said. "Don't worry. After 30 years in the Corps, there's not much that Alice and I haven't seen." I took out my phone and queued up the video. They watched all 4 videos before returning the phone. I could tell Bill and Alice were very upset by what they saw. Ron, however, took it all in stride and paused the video several times to get a better look at the people involved. "It's obvious she was drugged," Alice said. Bill and Ron nodded their heads in agreement. "But with what exactly, I don't know for sure," I told her. "Barbara, Henderson's assistant, said he was working on some super ecstasy or something like that." "And Henderson drugged you too?" asked Ron. "Yes," I said, "but by the time I was treated in the hospital, it had already disappeared from my body." By this time, Ron had taken out his laptop and booted it up. I gave it the password for my home wireless network, and it connected to the internet. "Those 2 thugs who beat you up," said Ron, "were they on video?" "Yes," I said. I opened one of the videos and paused it so Ron could get a good look at it. "Harvey Smith and Bill Jackson over there," I said, pointing to the 2 large men in the video. "Can you send me these videos?" Ron asked, giving me his email address. "Of course," I said. "I am redirecting the videos." Ron confirmed receipt of the files and got to work. "You know those aren't their real names," Ron said. "No, I didn't know that," I said. "What are they?" "They're ex-gangsters," said Ron. "They went missing after their boss, James Brolin, a.k.a. Jimmy the Weasel, was found murdered in his marital bed. The feds have been looking for them for some time." "How long have they been working for Henderson?" I asked. "I think it's been a couple of years now," I said. "Why do you ask?" "They went missing around this time," Ron said. "Are you saying they put Henderson on the wanted list all over the country?" "Yes," I said. "Okay," said Ron, clicking his mouse. "Let's see what we can come up with. I'll leave this for a while." We talked while Ron let his program do its thing. "So here's what we're going to do," the colonel said after we'd talked for a while. "Ron agreed to stay here with you until these guys are out of action. I don't like the idea of you being here alone while they're still out there." He told me, "Ron, let me know as soon as you hear anything about them, okay? Then I'll take care of everything." "Got it, Colonel," said Ron. "What are you going to do?" I asked Bill. "It's better if you don't know, son," he said. "Let's just say that we Marines take care of ourselves and leave it at that. Don't worry. One way or another, Henderson and his thugs will pay dearly." "You said you're on sick leave until Monday," he asked. "Yes," I said. "What are your plans after this?" he asked. "There's no way I can stay at Logan, not after this," I said. I thought a little and planned to hand in my resignation 2 weeks in advance on Monday. I'm also planning on selling this place and getting something smaller. "I don't blame you," he said. "Any word on when Linda's body will be released?" "It may be several days," Hawthorne told me. I said, "If you need any help with final preparations, let us know," he said. "Thank you, Dad, I appreciate it," I said. Bill stood up, signaling that the meeting was over. Alice and Ron stood up too. "We better go, honey," he said. "Ron, let me know as soon as you find out anything." "I will do so," he said. Bill turned to me and surprised me with a fatherly hug. In all the years I knew him, I never saw him hug another man. "Everything will be fine, son," he said. Alice moved closer when he released me and hugged me tenderly. "I'm so sorry this happened, Rick," she said. "Don't worry about anything, okay?" "I won't, Mom," I said. "Thank you for coming." "You're welcome," she said, "and call if you need anything." My phone rang shortly after they left the house. I looked at the number and saw that it was Josh. I answered the phone and sat down next to him to tell him what happened. At first he was shocked by this news. "Dad, that just doesn't seem like something she could do," Josh said. "I know. It doesn't make any sense to me either," I said. "Are there any clues as to why she did this?" he asked. "No, son. I looked at her phone and email, but there's nothing there," I said. "Maybe she has a burner phone somewhere," he said. "A burner phone?" I asked. "Yeah, one of those disposable phones you throw away when you pay as you go," Josh said. "Maybe she has one somewhere that you haven't found yet." My mind instantly switched to the videos they sent me. They came from a number I didn't recognize. Maybe it was her burner phone. If so, then no one could say where it was now. "You might be onto something," I said. "I didn't think about it." We talked a little more and ended the conversation with Josh asking me to let him know when his mother's body would be delivered for burial. After the call, I mentioned the burner phone idea to Ron. "That makes sense," he said. "If you have a number, I'll see what I can come up with." I gave it to him and he launched another program and entered the number. A few minutes later, he had his answer. "This number belongs to a phone bought here in the city," he said. "As you expected, this is a burner phone. The number is registered to Logan and was last identified Tuesday morning in NYC. There hasn't been any activity on it since you received the last video." "Any idea where he might be now?" I asked. "None," he said. "As far as we know, it was dismantled into pieces and thrown into the river." He went back to his computer, so I went upstairs and prepared a guest room for him because I had no idea how long he would be staying. He was still with me on Saturday, spending most of his time on the computer. I had no idea what he was doing, but we've gotten to know each other better since he arrived on Wednesday. He told me he was a sniper in the Marines and now works for a joint federal private task force. Although he was a certified public accountant, most of his work was related to research. He told me a little about what he and his wife Amy did with other executives who wanted to have their own way with her. I wasn't sure if he was telling me the truth or not, but they were interesting stories. The night before, he asked if I would mind if Amy joined him for the weekend. I gave him the go-ahead, and she arrived around 9 a.m. on Saturday morning. After he introduced us, they took her things to the guest room, and I slipped out to the garage to give them some privacy. After fiddling around in the garage for an hour or so, I went back inside. Ron and Amy were sitting in front of his computer looking at something. Ron looked up as I entered. "Any news?" I asked. "Yes," said Ron. "Firstly, the FBI took over the investigation. Secondly, About half an hour ago, I received a confident hit on our targets." "All three?" I asked. "Yeah, they're near Colorado Springs," Ron said. "I have already contacted the colonel, then he will figure it out himself. There is something else." "What is this?" I asked. "I was able to see the official autopsy report on your wife," he said. "About?" I asked. "What is written there?" "According to the report, your wife did suffer a massive heart attack from the chemicals Henderson gave her, but that's not what killed her," Ron said. "They found soil particles in her lungs." "What does it mean?" I asked. "She was alive when they buried her," said Ron. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. Barely alive, but alive nonetheless. "I'm sorry, that's not all." "More?" I asked in shock. "There was also extensive bruising around her private parts, and a toxicology report showed huge amounts of a range of chemicals in her blood, including ecstasy and cocaine. I'm sorry, Rick, but it looks like the last few hours of her life were brutal. I can't believe she did all this voluntarily." "What do you think happened?" I asked. "From what I've read, Henderson and his cronies probably had one hell of a party," he said. "Your wife was so excited about what Henderson gave her that she simply couldn't control herself. Somewhere along the way, she had a heart attack. Instead of taking her to a hospital where she might survive, they probably thought she was dead. So they carried her out and buried her." I sat down, shocked by what Ron had just told me. Amy came over and hugged me as hot tears streamed down my face. "Henderson and his goons are wanted for murder, conspiracy to commit murder, manufacture and use of a number of controlled substances, and racketeering, among other charges," Ron said. "The other people in your videos have already been arrested and charged, but Henderson is the main one they want." "What do you think will happen to him?" I asked. Ron shrugged. "Who knows?" he said. "One can only guess how things are with the courts these days." It was early the next morning when I woke up to my phone ringing. I looked at my watch and saw that it was 4:30 a.m. I wondered who could be calling me at this hour. I picked up the phone and heard a man's voice. "Check your text messages," the voice said before ending the call. I could tell the voice was masked and the caller did not leave his number. I opened my text messages and found one with a video attached. In the video I saw three men, naked and tied hand and foot. They were unceremoniously dumped in front of a brick building. I recognized them as Henderson, Bill, and Harvey. A sign was hung around Henderson's neck. "Memo to the FBI. I killed Linda Thompson," it read. I wondered if the FBI would get a clue. I finished watching the video and went back to sleep. I got up 4 hours later and went downstairs. Amy was in the kitchen frying bacon and eggs for the three of us. "I hope you don't mind me trying my hand at your kitchen," she said. "Ron gets angry if he doesn't get his bacon in the morning." "Not at all," I said. "I get a little irritable myself when I don't get my bacon. Help yourself." When she finished, we all sat down to breakfast. We had just finished when there was a knock on the door. I opened it and saw Ryan standing there. "Can I come in?" he asked. "Of course," I said, inviting him to enter. I introduced him to Ron and Amy, telling him they were friends of my father-in-law. "Would you like a cup of coffee or something else?" I asked. He shook his head. "No, Rick, I won't stay here that long," he said. "I just wanted to let you know that Henderson and two of his top thugs were taken into custody in Colorado Springs early this morning." "That's good, isn't it?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "I heard they're singing like canaries. There are just a few questions about how they were apprehended, but I'm sure you don't know anything about that, do you?" "No, I don't know," I said. "I've been here all night. Ron and Amy can attest to this." "Uh-huh," he said. "Well, I just wanted you to know. Now I'll leave you guys alone. Take care of yourself." "Thanks, Ryan," I said. After he left, I looked at Ron. "You don't happen to know anything about this, do you?" I asked. "Don't ask me questions and I won't lie to you," he said with a knowing smile. "I still advise you to call your father-in-law and thank him." I nodded my head and took out my phone. "Anderson," Bill said when he answered the phone. "Dad, I just wanted you to know that the police came to see me," I said. "I was told that Henderson and his thugs were detained in Colorado Springs." "Well, that's good news," he said. Ron told me to call and thank you, I told him. Did he do it? Bill asked. Yes, I said, so I just wanted to say thank you. You're welcome, son, he said. I understand you got a call last night. That's right, I said. Nice touch with the sign. Do you think that gave them a clue? He grinned when I said that. I sure as hell hope so, he said. We'll talk soon, son. Take care of yourself. I'll do that, Dad, I said. Thank you. The following Monday, I went to work and handed in my resignation. Everyone said they were very sorry to see me leave, but they understood my reasons. From there, I went to see a realtor about selling the house. I knew I had a lot of work ahead of me. We've lived in this house since the day we got married, and this place has held 2 decades of memories for me as well as 2 decades of accumulated junk. Another week passed before the medical examiner in New York released Linda's body. As promised, her parents took care of the funeral arrangements. I had mixed emotions about attending the service. On the one hand, I loved her exclusively for over 20 years and felt like a huge part of me died with her. On the other hand, I was torn by what she did at the end. I found myself wondering if it was really the drugs Henderson gave her, or if it was something else. In the end, I decided to go mainly for Bill and Alice's sake. They were kind to me, and I felt that I owed them at least that much. Josh was able to take a few days off from West Point to attend the funeral. It was nice to see him again, and we mourned Linda's death together, remembering the good times we had as a family. I decided not to tell him what she did in the end. He had always been close to his mother, and I saw no need to cloud his memories of her. Once that was done, I met with a lawyer about filing a lawsuit against Logan. I wasn't sure how far this would go, but the lawyer I spoke with seemed to think a strong case could be made against Henderson and the board of directors, especially since they were all facing multiple criminal charges. The criminal trial against Henderson and the board members who participated in the 2-day orgy with Linda seemed to go on forever. The U.S. attorney in charge of the case sought the death penalty for Henderson, and the defense team filed one stupid motion after another. I contributed and witnessed what happened to me personally and listened as others testified. Barbara also took the witness stand, telling the jury that Linda wasn't the only woman Jake drugged and used as a sex toy. When asked directly, she said she wasn't 100% sure if Linda and Henderson were having an affair before that fateful weekend. Video footage obtained from a search of Henderson's office appeared to indicate that Linda had rejected most, if not all, of Henderson's early advances. However, it became clear that over time, she began to warm up to the idea of turning me into a cuckold. A search of the office and residence also uncovered evidence that he was experimenting with drugs. The expert witnesses, however, did not fully understand what the drugs he made would actually do, but they all said that most of the compounds he formulated were definitely intended to be used as date rape drugs. Through the testimony, I finally learned what really happened to Linda. It turned out that Henderson had been keeping her alive with drugs and alcohol for most of the weekend. At some point in the end, she felt severe pain in her chest and fell to the floor, unconscious. The men told the jury they checked her but could not find a pulse. Instead of taking her to the nearest hospital, which was only a few minutes away, they assumed she was dead. After they cleaned her up a bit, they put her in the trunk of a car and drove her to Central Park, where they buried her. When questioned by the U.S. attorney, none of those involved responded that they had any training in CPR, and none were qualified to provide a medical opinion. Their fate was sealed when a medical examiner said he found soil in her lungs that matched the soil where she was buried. In other words, he told the jury, she was buried alive. I saw some of the jury members gasp when he said that. At the end of the trial, Jake, his 2 thugs, and everyone involved in the weekend party were found guilty of all charges. The judge decided against the death penalty and sentenced Jake to life in prison, along with Bill and Harvey. The rest were also sent to prison but received slightly lighter sentences. Civil lawsuits against Logan and Henderson were filed in their entirety following the conclusion of the criminal trial. By the time it was over, the company had lost almost all of its customers and was in receivership. After paying me a huge amount of money, Henderson was forced to file for bankruptcy. By the time all was said and done, the consequences of Henderson's plan to cuckold me were far greater than he had ever imagined. Linda was dead, and he and his accomplices were bankrupt and in prison. His beloved company essentially disappeared, and hundreds of people were left without work. As for me, life went on. The house finally sold, and I bought a nice 2-bedroom apartment. I felt a little sad when I closed the door to the house for the last time and handed over the keys to the new owner. But I had the rest of my life ahead of me. My consultant suggested that I take some time off and perhaps go on a nice cruise where I could meet a nice young woman. So this is what I decided to do. I booked an around-the-world cruise and, tickets in hand, hopped into a taxi that would take me to the airport. From there, I went to Miami and then all over the world. Who knows what I might find there? Thanks for watching. Can you believe the shocking twists in Rick's story? What would you have done in his situation? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more unbelievable tales. Until next time, stay vigilant and take care. I don't doubt that reading a bank statement has brought unhappiness to many people. It's almost certainly a common thing, probably causing disasters far worse than my own, but that didn't help, not one bit. I was just sorting through some papers on my wife's desk at home, trying to find whether she paid the phone bill or something similar, something quite ordinary and innocent. That's when I found it lying there under a pile of bills and other things, a bank statement from Maple Bank, as it happened. I probably only noticed it because we do all our stuff with Crescent Bank, and the red color on the heading just caught my attention, I guess. She'd chosen another bank to keep it hidden, which was ironic, really, as it was that difference that led me to taking note and flipping through it. First, I checked the name at the top, and it read Mary Thompson, so no surprise there. But the address, I'd never heard of, somewhere in the north end of Chicago, way north of Springfield, where we lived. Next, I checked the figure at the bottom, $18,600, a tidy balance. But where had it come from? I had no idea. Then I looked at the list of transactions over the last 3 months and was staggered at the regular large sums of money that had been going into it. $700 one day, over $1,200 a week later, then $900 just 6 days later, and so it went on. Now I make a good living from my business and was used to largish sums of money, but Mary only did a bit of part-time work for some marketing firm, an occasional afternoon or more likely an evening at the most, a weekend standing in for someone at some event or other, and even then mainly only for the fun of it, as it didn't pay a fortune. It was when I scanned the list of payouts that I was really thrown, as there, every month, was the same sum of money taken out by standing order, $600. The sum sounded worryingly familiar. I walked over to her cabinet, a fancy old-fashioned roll-top affair from the late 19th century, opened it, and got out my wife's filing folder. She was always very neat and precise, Mary, and I knew exactly where to look as we shared everything, no secrets between us, or at least there hadn't been till then. I found the Crescent Bank statements and scanned through them quickly till I found what I wanted, having no compunctions about going through her bank details as she showed them to me regularly. There it was in black and white, her salary from the agency, $600 every month. I was lost, absolutely lost. It seemed that Mary was paying herself her own salary from her own bank account. Why the hell would she do that? Did she really have a job at all? Where on earth did the money come from in the first place? Was this something to worry about? And was it any of my business? Like hell it was. What was Mary up to? I grabbed the Maple Bank statement again and studied it in more detail, realizing that virtually the only money ever withdrawn seemed to be the monthly payments, whereas the payments in were sporadic, frequent, but with no pattern to them. It then occurred to me that there was an awful lot more money going in than coming out, so I looked back at the balance at the bottom of the last page. Bloody hell, it wasn't $18,600. I'd missed a zero, and it was $186,000. My name is Tom Thompson. I'm 45, quite presentable, and run my own construction business where I employ 2 other people. My wife Mary is 35, 10 years younger than me, and to my mind just about the right age difference. I give her my maturity, such as I have, my experience in life, and a very comfortable lifestyle. She gives me her relative youth, her beauty which she has in abundance, and all the fun in the world. We both give one another our loving both spiritually and physically, without reserve. We are both, without doubt, after 5 years of marriage, still head over heels in love with one another, as I had been since our first day. I'd been up in Chicago for a meeting with a guy to discuss some deal with a big contractor, and I was sitting in the hotel bar afterward, thinking about the possible advantages of going along with their idea. Then Mary walked in, and my insides flipped. It's not that I didn't have a girlfriend. In fact, I probably had too many, but none of them were that special. Somehow I knew that she could be special, but only if I could get to know her. Mary was 56, tall, slim, with nice, shapely tan legs that seemed to go on forever from the dainty high heels on her feet till they disappeared under the very short cocktail dress that she wore. She had longish blonde hair and deep blue eyes with a cute little turned-up nose. My dream girl wasn't a classic beauty, but she didn't need to be, and every man in the place must have been eyeing her up, all no doubt with similar thoughts to my own. She simply oozed breeding, elegance, confidence, fun, and sex, and not necessarily in that order. I'm sure everyone watched her as she looked around, nodding to the receptionist who obviously knew her, no doubt a regular resident. Then she looked straight at me, and my insides did a somersault as her soft blue eyes melted away any doubts that I wanted her. I smiled back and acknowledged her, wondering what the hell to do next, but didn't have to worry about it. A smile that would have lit up the street outside flashed across her face, and she walked towards me, suggesting that maybe, "Hi, you must be Tom," she said to my surprise. "Tom, not Thomas," I replied, my voice perhaps a bit hoarse. "Thomas, Tom, what's the difference?" She laughed, and I wasn't about to argue with her. "May I sit down?" she asked in her rather clipped, very Midwest accent, but very sweet. Of course," came my urgent response, leaping up to pull the chair back for her. Even the way she sat down showed class, as if she had been taught how to do it at some posh finishing school. I wondered why me. What had I done to earn the attention of this dream on legs of a woman? How on earth did she know my name? "I'm Mary," she said. "Sorry I'm late, but I got held up. Thanks for waiting." She then looked at me and asked, "Are you okay, Tom?" I was. I was fine, but she later laughed as she told me that I had looked totally shocked. I recovered quickly, however, and within moments we were engaged in gentle banter, delighted to discover that we shared so many interests, the same music, tennis, Italian food, and, believe it or not, even soccer. Mary was an educated woman and could speak about a whole range of subjects, unlike the others that I had been with lately. Then her mobile rang. She excused herself and answered it. I heard her say, "No, I'm here. No, Hez here as well. Couldn't be, heck, here with me." "Oh dear, oh golly, hang on a moment." She looked at me quizzically, the smile returning to her lovely features, and I stared back. "Were you expecting me by any chance?" she asked. "No, but I'm very pleased you arrived," I replied cheekily. "You're not Thomas Green at all, are you?" "No, I'm Tom Thompson." "Oh," she said as she giggled and lifted her mobile up. She said into it, "I was late and I've got the wrong Thomas, or Tom, actually." Her use of profanities with her posh accent was wonderful, sounded so out of place yet so natural. She turned her head and half covered her mouth so that I could not make out the next few exchanges between her and whoever was on the other end of the line. I just knew I was going to lose her in the next few minutes, and desperately tried to think of something witty to say the moment she ended the call. Then Mary looked back at me, still holding the phone, that smile verging on a grin spreading back across her face. "No, he's quite cute, actually," she said into the phone, but staring straight at me, making sure that I could hear. "Rather good-looking in a rugged sort of way. I think I may have blushed. Okay, then, give him my apologies. Next time he's in the U.S., maybe." And she finished her conversation, slipping her mobile back into her bag. "Well then," she said, "looks like I've missed my appointment. Never mind." The smile never left her face. "Assuming you're free this evening, what do you fancy doing? And how about we do it together?" I refrained from telling her what my first choice would have been and suggested that we have dinner, She readily agreed, and that's exactly what we did, the best meal of my life. And I hardly noticed what we ate. I was already under her spell. Mary told me about her job in marketing, how she set up meetings, arranged discreet functions, helped her agency to put people together in the right place at the right time. She obviously loved it, and I was already hoping that she could love me as much. After the meal, I walked her back to the taxi rank, overjoyed to see that there was a small queue and that I would have more time to chat and this time to hold her. I put my arm around her, and she snuggled up, sliding her arm around my waist and cuddling up to me. I kissed her lightly on the cheek, and she returned the favor, just the sweet smell of her sending my senses into overdrive. Then she looked around, maneuvered me between her and the others in the queue, put her arms up around my neck and pulled me down till our lips met. Heaven. Just the briefest of touches, but it was like discovering the land of milk and honey, and I had the honey in my arms. I got carried away and almost disgraced myself as I kissed her more hungrily, running my hands over her back, feeling the soft curve as it descended down to her bottom. "Hey, hang on," she cried and then laughed. "Give a girl a chance, can't you? We've only just met." I drew back, disappointed but not really, frustrated but not really. This was some special girl and worth the effort, worth the wait. Sorry, I apologized, got carried away, and she giggled deliciously yet again. Slowly, she said, "Kiss me slowly. It'll be worth it in the long run." Christ, I was lost, and I think it was then that I fell in love with Mary, my wife that was. On our first accidental date, I suggested we might go back to my hotel for a nightcap, but she'd have none of it, teasing me that I was after a little more than that, and that a first date was just too soon. "Can I see you again?" I asked, and she teased me again, humming and hurrying about whether it would be worth it, all the time holding on to me, holding me against her beautiful slim body and sending me crazy with desire. "Okay," she relented at last, shrugging her lovely shoulders. "I'll ring you. What's your number?" "I don't trust you," I said a bit boldly. "You give me yours and I'll ring you." "No can do, Tom," Mary replied quietly. "I don't give my number out, especially to handsome strangers. I'm afraid I'll ring you." We made a compromise and agreed to meet the following Friday, too long for me, but the earliest she could manage. What was I going to do about this newfound knowledge about my wife's affairs? Why did she have all this money, and where did it come from? Sure, her parents were rich, owned an estate down in Wisconsin, hunted, shot pheasants, and owned a fair share of one of the smaller investment banks, one that had survived the aftermaths of the big crash as well. So obviously the family was well connected. There was no reason why my wife wouldn't have money, even sums like that. But where had it come from? And why in obscure, if substantial, sums? It had to be something to do with the marketing company she worked for, but really I had no idea. I'd ask her, I just knew I couldn't. If she was hiding it from me, then there was a reason, and I had to find out that reason, and whatever it cost, I have to admit it frightened me a bit. Though it seemed impossible, it seemed that Mary seemed to be mixed up in some shady deal or something. I had to go down to Chicago a few days afterwards, so I looked up the address on the statement. It was a swishy area and rare of money, old money, just the sort of place Mary's family would feel comfortable in. At least that relaxed me a little. I looked at the brass plates on the door, but none of them meant anything. Just a couple catching my eye: corporate agency and Golden Circle agency. The others all being accountants or stockbrokers by the sound of them. I waited around for a while, but nobody arrived or left. No joy there. I had drawn a blank and didn't know how to proceed. All I could do was confront her, but that didn't appeal at all. She was hiding something from me, and now it seemed possible her family were involved. I had to find out what, and perhaps more importantly, why. Our second date was memorable, and I remember quite clearly what she wore. The tight denim jeans and white sweater would have looked good on any attractive woman. Ralph Lauren just has that ability, but on her, it was stunning. I'm sure it was for women like my wife that designers like him got their inspiration. It was a woman like my wife, perhaps, that launched 1,000 ships. We went to the theater, then on for a late dinner. It was superb. Again, No idea at all what we ate. Afterwards, the two of us strolled down the banks of the river, arm in arm like lovers have done throughout time, and I sort of assumed she would come back to my hotel. She did. And I sort of assumed she would come up to my room. She did. And I sort of assumed that she would join me in bed. She didn't. She wouldn't. Not that we didn't enjoy ourselves, and not that I didn't manage to persuade her out of her sweater, her beautiful firm breasts being everything and more than I could ever have hoped for. She grabbed me, kissed me passionately, forcing her tongue in between my lips, twirling it around mine, the very taste of her sending me into a trance. My fingers started to undo the top button, and she gasped, cried out, her hips already gyrating, thrusting herself up to my hand. Then she stopped, just like that, realizing perhaps how far we were going and what it would lead to. "No, please, no," she whispered, holding my hand but without the resolve to actually push it away. "I'm not ready, not yet. Please don't." It was maybe the most difficult decision I ever made in my life till then. I stopped, pulled back. She made no attempt to stop me, almost daring me to defy her, looking at me imploringly. However, trusting me not to. Then the moment was over and we cuddled up, kissing and holding one another tightly. Bloody hell, we were adults, me in my 40s and her in her 30s, but she wasn't ready. Not yet. I asked what the problem was, if there was indeed a problem, and she nodded, whispered yes, and then burst into tears. What can you do if you love the woman? And by then I undoubtedly did. Then you accept it. I held her tightly, spoke to her calmly, and told her that everything was okay. We lay there like that, and my passion died slowly down, only my love for her remaining. A good hour later she sighed and eventually got up, apologized, and tears started to run down her cheeks again. "I'm sorry," she whimpered. "I'm in such a mess, such an awful mess. You've no idea at all." I pulled her tight to me, the tighter the better, to make all her problems go away, and eventually, for the time being at least, they did. "Thank you, Tom," she said at last. "You are the most wonderful man." She kissed me, and everything seemed fine. We stayed there cuddling for some time, but it had to end, and I found myself escorting her out to the taxis yet again. 1 in the morning and still no sex, but I'd never felt so bloody good in my life. I thought about confronting Mary with the problem of where all the money had come from and why was she paying herself. At best, it could be from her family, maybe cash they were stashing away from the tax man. That took my fancy for some time, but it was too easy, too convenient, and I knew there was more to it. I had no other explanation, nothing at all, just a knot building up in my stomach that not all was as it seemed, and that I was in for a major shock. Though even then I did not imagine how big a shock I was in for. I followed her one evening all the way to Chicago, when she was off on one of her jobs for the marketing firm, keeping her Lexus carefully in my sights to see if she really did go to the hotel where her company had set up some meeting or other, or whether she would slip off to meet someone sinister. But no, there she was, pulled up outside the correct hotel, good as gold, elegantly stepping out of her car and handing the keys to some attendant. Nothing to get upset about, and several hours wasted by following her all the way down from Springfield. What a bloody fool I had become. I resolved to just ask her. The explanation would surely be quite simple. I'd ask her that very night when she got back, however late it might be. But she didn't come back that night and woke me in the morning, the ring of the telephone bringing me back into the real world, away from my tormented sleep, as I raised myself from the sofa where I had spent the night waiting for her return. "Hi, Tom," she chirped, as happy and bright as a lark. "Sorry. Got really tied up in some discussions last night, and the company paid for a room at the hotel for me. Went well, though. Be back before lunchtime. How about lunch at the bridge, and I'll tell you about it. Why didn't you ring me last night?" I demanded. "I've been worried." "I did," she said with concern. But there was no answer. I left a message. I looked down, and sure enough, the message light was flashing on the phone. She must have rung when I was on my way back from Chicago, and I hadn't noticed when I'd come in with all the other things on my mind. I agreed to meet her at the bridge, but I was still confused. I felt the world closing in on me. I didn't know what to do or what else to say. The next week I followed her again, feeling like a traitor, hating myself for the distrust that I felt and the thoughts that were permeating my brain. Our third date was a defining moment. I'd looked forward to it like an adolescent, hoping against hope that all would go well, hoping that I might get her into bed, but even more than that, praying that the date would go well, that she would be happy, and that the awkward tensions of our previous date would not resurface. We met on neutral ground halfway between Chicago and Springfield, at a lovely little inn that I had discovered some months before. It was an inspired choice, and Mary was relaxed from the start, everything I could have wished for, from the moment she turned every head in the place when she arrived till she whispered in my ear at the end of our meal. "Do they have rooms here, Tom?" she asked, and my prayers seemed answered. It would be difficult to describe how wonderful that night was, but I'll try. I was no virgin by a long way, but it seemed that I had discovered one, a rare find in one so beautiful already into her 30s. She was so nervous as I undressed her, as if I had been the first one to ever do so, shivering as I undid her dress and allowed it to drop to the floor. I rested her down back on the bed, determined that if it was to be her first time, then she would never forget it. Her breathing was heavy and rapid, her eyes closed. "Tom, Tom, please, Tom," she whispered huskily. But the rest was lost as a shudder ran through her lovely body that could only have been one thing. Her body relaxed, and she lay back, opening her eyes at last, looking up at me with an expression that said only one thing. I love you, Tom. I really love you," my woman stuttered uncertainly. "I think I'm ready now. Please be gentle." Then we had amazing sex. I took back over control from her, withdrawing just a little as I made love to her, and she returned it in full. We lay silently in each other's arms, relishing one another's nakedness, both satisfied and contented. "Thank you, Tom," Mary whispered into my chest. "Thank you, my love." I kissed her and told her how much I loved her as well. "I needed that, Tom," she said after a few moments. "I've needed that for a long time, and I'm just so glad it was you." The second time that I followed Mary was even easier. I knew the hotel where her meeting was scheduled, and I let Mary get ahead, arriving half an hour or so after her and wondering what the hell I was doing there and quite what I was going to do. I slunk into the reception area, terrified that she would spot me, having no idea what explanation I could possibly make for my being there. She wasn't there, of course. Why should she be? So I made my way to the bar, peeping in, already having decided that this was all so stupid, so childish, and that I would leave immediately if she wasn't there. But Mary was there, in the bar, chatting to some guy. She was sat with her back to me, but I knew it was her. The man she was talking to looked American, much older than Mary, maybe in his late 50s, expensively dressed and impeccably groomed. I felt the tension draining out of me as I realized that he was exactly as he should be, a rich client of the agency. Obviously some businessman that she was discussing some arrangements with. I felt such a fool, cursing myself for suspecting that Mary had been involved with some man, though I hadn't even allowed myself to admit to those thoughts till that moment. What was I to do then? I was still no nearer to the truth about the money, but at least my main fear had been allayed. She wasn't having an affair. Maybe this guy was something to do with all the money she'd been hiding away, but I was no super sleuth and had no way of progressing further. Go home, I thought to myself. Just go home and stop being so silly. Another few hours wasted, driving up to Chicago and back, just because of my stupid doubts. Then Mary stood up and my stomach went tight. She looked fabulous and so sexy in a tight black mini dress that just skimmed below her bottom, leaving her long, slim legs so bare and molding around her body so that even from across the room I could see she couldn't possibly have been wearing a bra. The tightness in my middle gripped tighter, but it wasn't how gorgeous my wife looked, but that I'd never seen that dress before, and it certainly wasn't the smart gray skirt suit that Mary had left our house in just a few hours before. My chest went tight, but I told myself I was being silly again, unreasonable. Why wouldn't she change for an evening meeting? Why shouldn't Mary look sexy to impress an important customer? Then she laughed at something he said and smiled at him her smile, the one that would light up the street outside, the smile that I always imagined she reserved for me. Worse, she reached up to him and put her hand on his chest, playfully, coquettishly, not the sort of gesture a woman would make to a business client, not unless she knew him well, very well indeed. The thought that it could be a friend of her father's flashed through my mind, an old family friend, maybe like an uncle, but I was clutching at straws. When Mary reached up, stretching on her tiptoes to kiss him on the cheek, my world started to go black. A dark rage come over me, only getting worse as he bent down and returned the kiss, but directly on her lips, the two of them holding it for longer than any uncle and niece had a right to. The prick, the scum-sucker, the cheating scum-sucker. I'd kill him, but I could only stand there and watch as Mary played up even more to him, cuddling up to him as he put his arm affectionately around her, grinning at him as she so often did to me, as he patted her bottom, molding her gorgeous body into his as he squeezed her tightly. I couldn't breathe. I needed air, but I couldn't leave, couldn't pull myself away from the dreadful scene being played out before my eyes. They kissed again, this time with even more feeling, and Mary, my beautiful, sweet Mary, seemed blissfully lost in the company of this unknown man. "Can I help you, sir?" I looked around, and there was some uniformed flunky questioning my right to be there, questioning my right to watch my beloved wife make out with some scum-sucker stranger. "Go to hell," I shouted far too loudly. It all got out of hand after that, and he called for help. 3 of them manhandling me out to the back entrance as I watched Mary going off with this stranger, laughing at his no doubt stupid bloody jokes, running her hand up and down his back and making no objection as he reached down and cupped the cheeks of her bum as if he owned it. I found myself on the floor in a back alley, a few scratches on my face, but no serious harm done. I made my way back to the front and stormed back in, determined to confront her, to find out what was going on. But the security guys caught me again, threw me out on my ear, threatening to be less gentle if I didn't bugger off, unwilling to listen to my pleas that my wife was in there with another man. I slinked off, searching hopelessly up at the windows, wondering which set of curtains they were hidden behind, and the thought of what that scum-sucker was doing to my Mary, my dearest Mary, tearing at my soul. What hold did he have over her? Where did the money come into this? Damn it, the money didn't matter anymore. My wife Mary was in there somewhere, being screwed by her lover, and I was powerless to stop it. Again, a flashback after that last date. Things went wonderfully. I felt like a teenager in love again, and it just never seemed to go away. Mary seemed the same, and I met her parents, who seemed overjoyed that at last someone had won her heart. We were married 6 months afterward, the biggest wedding I'd ever been to or ever likely to, all paid for by her wealthy parents, who seemed more interested in making a good show than anything else. I vaguely tried to find out if she had some troubled past experience, why she had apparently still been a virgin in her 30s in this day and age, but she didn't wish to discuss it, promising to tell me all about it one day, and we were so happy, so in love, that it didn't seem to matter anyway. The first 6 months were bliss, unless you worked for me, of course, in which case it seemed that nobody could get much sense out of me. It didn't matter as everyone was happy for me, even my competitors, so touched that they didn't take too much advantage like hell they didn't. It came as a wake-up call when we lost a big account, and I had to put a lot more effort into my business. Not that I neglected Mary, however, but she felt the difference, I suppose, lost a bit of her spirit and acted a bit down. "What's up, Mary, love?" I asked for the 10th time, not really expecting a sensible answer. She looked at me, sighed, and at last told me. "I'm a bit bored," she admitted. "Not with you, not at all. You're wonderful." I smiled back at her, happy to hear her say it, even though our lovemaking had waned considerably over the last few months. "I need something to interest me, keep my brain working. Maybe I could do a bit of work for my old agency." She'd stopped working for them just after our marriage and had seemed happy. But it was true that just lately there was obviously something missing in her life. "Would they take you back? Have you asked them?" I ventured, thinking it might be a good idea. Mary smiled. It was that smile. And I knew her mind was made up and that I had no argument, even if I thought of one. "They've rung me every month since we were married. They're desperate for me to go back, she sang out. I've sort of suggested that I might go back and do a bit, just part-time. It was settled. The following week, she went back up to Chicago to see them and started a few days later doing some afternoon meeting thing for them. She came home that evening full of smiles, happy as Larry. She'd had a great day, and all was well again. The Thompson household was back on track. I had nothing to complain about as Mary rediscovered her zest for life and the energy for sex, even more than before, though I wouldn't have thought it possible. Mary had always liked straightforward sex previously, which I put down to her lack of experience, shying nervously away from anything out of the ordinary. But from then on, she became liberated, totally prepared to try anything. It was surprising how naturally good at it all she was, and how much she loved it. I had no idea why I deserved this unrivaled pleasure. I didn't worry about it, and I just enjoyed it. The next 2 years or so were incredible, the earlier problems having disappeared. We spent every possible spare moment together, and I pined when she was out for the evening, even more so when she was away for a whole weekend in Paris, New York, or wherever. But her job took her mainly down to Chicago, and whenever I could, I tried to arrange something so that I could meet her down there and have lunch before she disappeared off for the evening to some function or other. Then I found that bank statement, and it all changed. I couldn't believe she was cheating on me, but the evidence was there. I'd seen it. I'd seen her kissing and cuddling up to her boyfriend in the hotel. I'd seen his hand on her ass, his fingers disappearing up under the back of her short dress. There was no doubt in my mind that they had ended up inside it not much later on. The thought of that brought tears of frustrated rage to my eyes. How could she do this? How could she cheat me like this? What was so special about this American guy? What did he have that I didn't? A bigger tool or what? Damn it, he was 20 years older than me, 30 years older than her. Maybe it was someone she worked with, but he looked well off, so perhaps it was her boss. And I seem to remember her saying that one of the directors was an American. However close a working relationship, bosses aren't allowed those liberties, not unless there's something going on. My mind went in circles till I felt like bursting into tears. Maybe this had been going on for some time. Maybe that's why she wanted to go back to work for them. Maybe, oh damn it, I didn't know what to think. It was a Thursday, the morning after I'd been thrown out of the hotel, and I just couldn't take it anymore. I'd heard Mary's car arrive home in the early hours, and I wondered how many other times she had come home this late when she'd been with him without me knowing when I was fast asleep. It was some time before she came up to bed, and even in the gloom, I could make out that she had changed into her nightgown already, maybe showered in the spare bedroom as well, maybe so that I wouldn't detect the smell of her lover on her. I was livid but determined to hold on till the morning. If I was going to throw her out, then tough on her. But if it was me walking out the door, then the early hours weren't too welcoming. I still prayed that there'd be an explanation, and that in the morning she'd laugh about it and tell me about the stupid prick trying to take advantage of her. She snuggled up to my back, but I pretended to be asleep, refusing to be aroused from my slumbers, even though she cuddled up close, wrapped her arms around me, and kissed the back of my neck. I doubted whether we would ever be sleeping together again, never mind making love. It was with some relief to me that she eventually gave up, probably to her as well. She wouldn't have to pretend anymore. The next morning I was up and dressed long before her, but then I hadn't had such an energetic evening as she had no doubt experienced. "Hi, sweetie," she called out as she breezed into the living room, her loveliness almost making me change my plans. "How are you this morning?" I didn't reply, just sat there impassively, my heart thumping, and she looked around at me, the cup in her hand crashing back to the table as it slipped from her hand. "What on earth happened to you?" she cried. Her concern could almost have been genuine. The 2 bruises that had been added to the cuts on my face the second time I'd been thrown out were obviously a bit of a surprise. Mary made to run to my side, but I held my hand up to stop her. Maybe the look on my face had more to do with it. "What's up, Tom? What happened?" she demanded urgently. "I got thrown out of a bar last night," I replied tersely. I didn't get the response I expected, but I should have foreseen it. "What? You got thrown out of a bar?" she squealed in her oh-so-English accent. "You stupid man, what did you do? Get drunk or something?" She looked at me and grinned, almost giggled, as she imagined me, the pillar of respectability, getting thrown drunk out of some pub. "Hope it wasn't the bridge, Tom. We're supposed to be going there tomorrow night." The grin on her face died as she realized I wasn't smiling back. From now on, I would begin to enjoy this little discussion, and in some small way, I would make her suffer for what she had done to me. "What's up, Tom?" she asked simply. "Sit down," I instructed. "You may need to." I waited a few moments, savoring the tension in her face. She knew something was up, but had no idea what. Now the shoe was on the other foot. It wasn't a pub I was thrown out of. It was a bar, a hotel bar. Hotel bar? What hotel? One in Springfield, she asked, unable to understand where this conversation was going. Not Springfield. Chicago. The North End, sort of. Lincoln Parkway. I noticed a quiver on her lips, no more than that, but the mention of Lincoln Park shocked her. That's where she had spent the night. "Which hotel?" she asked, but she had already dropped her gaze. I guess she knew what was coming. "The Grand Central," I said calmly. "It's just off the square. Maybe you know it, Mary. Maybe you've been there recently, maybe." Mary ran her hand across her brow and then looked up, trying to force a smile to her face. She didn't know how much I knew. Christ, I didn't know how much I knew. "Okay, so I was there last night. I was working," she whispered, and then spoke louder, more confidently. "Christ, Tom, you knew I was going there. I told you so. I always tell you where I'm going. What's this all about?" "It's about who you were with," I answered, still calm outwardly, if not inside. She looked straight at me, not sure what to say. "A client." "Just a client," Mary said at last, but her voice wavered. I think she already knew she had lost. "And do all your clients get to feel your ass? Do they all treat you as if they own you? Do they all get kissed like they were your lover?" I threw at her, losing my calm completely. Mary looked at me and her face dissolved. Then she burst into tears. I should have felt triumph, but all I felt was heartbreak, our heartbreak. I still loved her, you see. I resisted the temptation to rush to her, cuddle her, and tell her it was all okay, to not worry about it. It was too late for that. I waited as there was no way that I was going to say the next words. What she said next could just make a difference. After a while, she looked up and, while still sniffing back the tears, said, "I love you, Tom," then burst out crying again, the grief racking through her whole body. I again waited till she settled down, again waited for her to speak first. "What did you see, Tom?" she asked timidly. "I'll tell you what I saw, you witch. I saw you smile at him and kiss him. I saw you stroking his back and him fondling your backside, which you didn't seem to object to. I saw the two of you going off arm in arm towards the stairs, with his hand halfway up the back of your dress. That's what I saw. I suppose you were off to his bedroom. Am I right?" Mary looked at me sadly, sadder than I could ever remember seeing her. She opened her mouth to deny, but stopped, knowing it was a waste of time. Then she nodded her head just enough to acknowledge my fears to be correct, the look in her eyes one of utter despair. "I suppose you screwed one another, screwed away all night, and then had the damn cheek to come back here smelling of him." "That's not true," she wailed back. "I didn't come back like that." I showered before leaving the hotel. "I'd never do that to you, I promise." I wasn't sure what her promises were worth anymore, so I went on. "Then why did you get changed in the other room? Why didn't you undress in our room like you normally would? I didn't want to wake you if you were sleeping. I didn't want to wake you up." Her response was immediate, had the ring of truth, but hardly excused her. "And why was that?" I asked at last. "Because you didn't want me to know how late you were back, maybe," Mary whispered, almost inaudibly. "Maybe, after some moments, and not for the first time. I'll bet." I shot at her, her silence confirming my accusation. "What do we do now then, Mary?" I asked after another long silence, the only noise her sniffling as she tried to control her emotions. I wasn't enjoying this as much as I'd hoped I would. "I don't know, Tom, but I do love you. Only you. You're the only one." "Oh, yes, Mary, I'm the only one you love, but you make love to some other guy behind my back. That's really convincing. I really believe that. It was just sex. We didn't make love, not love. It was just sex, fun, exciting even, but just sex. And there's a difference." I questioned her. She nodded her head. Yes, there's a difference, a big difference. Please, Tom, understand there's a big difference. I was in no mood to understand the difference and was finding it harder to control my anger. This lover of yours, I continued. Who is he? How long has this been going on? He's not my lover, she insisted. I've told you he's not. It's not what you think, Tom. Honestly, there's absolutely nothing between us. Please believe me. Shut up, you stupid woman, I interrupted her. Stop making it worse. Stop lying to me. Do you think I'm bloody stupid or something? Tell me now, how long have you been screwing him? Is it weeks or months or maybe years? I only met him last night, said Mary, suddenly calm, though the tears still streamed down her cheeks. I met him at the hotel probably only 5 or 10 minutes before you spotted us. Oh, yes, and I'm supposed to believe that, am I? I suppose he bought you a glass of wine and got you drunk, took advantage of you, you poor little cow. No, it wasn't like that at all, Tom, was my beautiful bride's whispered answer. As I said, I was working. He paid me to have sex with him. Mary's story. Hi, I suppose you must all think I'm awful, and I can't blame you. It broke Tom's heart when I told him the guy in the hotel had paid me for sex, that I was a call girl. I tried to tell him I wasn't, that I worked as an escort girl, but who was I kidding? Not even myself anymore. He called me a cheap prostitute, and that really hurt me, made me cry. Somehow, I can't stand the word prostitute, and I just can't think of myself as one. A silly little difference in words, maybe, but it had always allowed me to live with myself. And cheap, do know, I certainly wasn't cheap, not by any standards. My clients were all very rich, and they had to be to pay me and the commission my agency, Golden Circle, took. Top politicians, sportsmen, captains of industry, as the press called them, all sorts, and from all over the world as well. Like the other girls, I had regulars, once a month maybe, and some of them I'd known for some years, a couple before I even met Tom. Though I prayed to God that he'd never discover that fact. There were British, American, Canadian, French, all sorts, quite an international clientele. Mostly it was when they were visiting Chicago, usually on business, but they often invited me away for the weekend, and before I married Tom, sometimes a week or more. Golly, that always cost them a packet, several thousands, but I guess I gave them good value. When I was with them, I was their girlfriend, their mistress, loving and attentive. For my clients, I must have been the perfect girlfriend, available on demand by way of a simple telephone call to do more or less anything they wanted, and not there when they didn't need me. I never spoiled it by taking money direct from them either. That went through Golden Circle, and they then paid my cut. But since I'd got married directly into my secret bank account, I never even touched any of that money. I couldn't bring myself to do so, and it had long since been nothing to do with money anyway. That is, except for my so-called monthly salary, which was then transferred to my normal account to cover up what I was up to. And I made a point of letting Tom see that on a regular basis to make sure he suspected nothing. Then he found that damn statement. The man I loved so completely and desperately found it where I had hidden it overnight, and my world collapsed. I cried for a week, my eyes red with my grief. Tom had stormed out of the house, and he was crying like a baby. I couldn't believe I could have hurt him so deeply. It was stupid to think I could get away with it forever. And I don't know what I must have been thinking. It had just become my way of life. I'd been doing escorting when I met him, and though I'd stopped for over 6 months after we got married, it was like a drug, and I drifted back into it. I could claim I was forced, but that is too easy, and I don't deserve easy anymore. I've lost my right to that. I had no idea where he'd gone, where he was living, and despite my calls, he refused to speak to me or even listen to me. I was desperate, almost suicidal, and though I understood his hurt, I knew he loved me, or at least had, and couldn't understand how he could cut me off so abruptly like that. I cut myself off from everyone and didn't have a friend in the world. I realized how my lifestyle had provided me with so many so-called friends, but none I could confide in, not one single one that I could cry my heart out to. There was one, of course, but he wouldn't speak to me, and who could blame him? I turned down several dates and told them I wasn't well. I must have sounded terrible on the phone, so I guess they believed me. And anyway, I was in no condition to entertain any men. To my shame, even then, I never thought about telling them I was finished with that way of life. I hope it was just because I never thought about it clearly. After about 10 days with no contact, even Sarah at his office politely turning down my requests to be put through to him, I decided to go there. By then, I'd stopped crying all the time, and my eyes had recovered somewhat, but despite applying my makeup, I still looked a mess. Though I am quite pretty, I know I'm not naturally an outstanding beauty like some girls are, but I've always been able to make the most of my appearance. And I'd had the best education that money could buy. I do have a good figure, and I knew how to stand, how to walk, and how to hold myself, as I'd been taught by the best in the world at my finishing school in Switzerland. I taught myself how to laugh at men's jokes and how to talk to them on subjects they would be interested in. I knew I had a dazzling smile, but I'd been born with that. I was used to heads turning when I walked into a room, and I adored it, almost came to expect it. But I didn't turn any heads that day. None at all. "Christ, Mary, you look terrible," said Sarah when I presented myself at her desk. We had become quite friendly over the last few years, but she was now the epitome of discretion, so my appearance must have really surprised her. "Sorry, Tom is not here. When will he be back?" I asked, fighting to hold back another bout of crying. Sarah looked at me pityingly, stood up, and took me gently by the arm. "Come on," she said. "I'm due a break. Let's go and get a coffee somewhere." Over coffee, actually. I drank tea. She told me that Tom had seen my car pulling into the car park and had gone out through the back door as I'd come in through the front. He told her Wed had a big bust-up, but not why, which made me sigh with relief. "He won't discuss it," she said. "He's in a terrible state. Do you want to tell me what it's about?" "I can't," I replied, "but it's my fault, not his." "That bad?" Sarah commented with a knowing look. "Worse than that," I replied. "Much worse. I think you need to find someone to talk to about this," she suggested. "Someone close to you that you can trust." It was good advice, but I had nobody I was close to. My parents, an only child. But how do you start a conversation like that? "I haven't mentioned it before, Daddy, but I've been working as a prostitute since I left university, and my husband's just found out." No, it just wasn't possible. I had nobody, and I'd have to work it out for myself. But it didn't work out that way. The agency kept ringing me, and eventually I had to admit what had happened, that my husband had found out. "Oh dear," they said, but that was about all. The last thing they wanted was to get involved in a marital argument. Then a week later, Ralph rang. Ralph was another of my American clients, nearly 60, but in really good shape, a good lover. And I'd known him since before I'd met Tom. We got on really well, and I suppose I did have some quite deep feelings for him, though nothing like I had for Tom. Anyway, he was married, and once I'd even met his wife, though I was, of course, introduced as a junior business contact. Ralph was one of only 2 of my dates that I had ever given my telephone number to. I felt I could trust him. "Sorry, Ralph," I said when I heard his voice. "I'm not available at the moment, might not be for some time." "Golden Circle told me your bad news," he said back to me over the phone, and I burst into tears. "You need someone to talk to, don't you?" Ralph went on. "Let's meet somewhere, maybe I can help." "Oh, Ralph, please no, don't ask me out. I'm in no state to give you what you want. Payback time," he said quietly. "Time I did something for you rather than the other way round. No messing around, I promise. Meet me at the usual place. No, not there. I'll come up to Springfield. Where do you suggest?" 5 hours later, I was seated in front of Ralph, and he started to question me. "Do you want him to come back?" he asked first, to which I replied that of course I did, but there seemed to be little chance. If not, then I would be more than happy to... Well, you know that Polly and me haven't been getting on so well for some time now, and I thought... I interrupted him. "Please, Ralph, don't lead me down that path. I like you, okay? I love you in some way, but you're not Tom. Sorry, but you're just not Tom." Ralph nodded his head sadly. "I expected that, Mary. Sorry, but I had to ask. Had to get it out of the way." I smiled at him. He was so sweet. "Tom won't talk to me, Ralph. He just won't talk to me. I don't know what to do. I don't understand how, if he loved me, he could cut me off like that. And I don't think you've yet realized quite how much you have destroyed him." "His whole world, young lady," Ralph replied. But he just doesn't understand. It was just sex, just something I need, the excitement. It's like a drug, and I don't seem to be able to exist without it. Going with a range of different men all the time, not knowing who I'd be going to bed with from one week to another. I can't seem to explain it to anyone. I poured my feelings out, explaining how even when I'd stopped after getting married, I'd ended up miserable after just 6 months or so with only one lover, wonderful though he was. And as much as I was in love with him, just sex was it. Ral asked, "Yes, there was never anything else, just sex. The way you smiled at me, the way you kissed me, the way you pleased me, just sex all the time, was it?" Ralph asked. He wasn't asking, he was querying whether Id got my feelings right. I thought about it, remembered what it was like being with him, remembered the feelings with which we had made love. Yes, made love, not had sex. I was kidding myself. And though it had so often been just sex with most of them, an adventure to take part in and forget, with Ralph and a few others for that matter, it had been more than that, far more. Do you remember how you reacted when you found out I'd gone with one of the other girls when you were on holiday, Mary? Ralph demanded gently, reminding me of how angry I had been, how I had shouted and screamed at him, sulked for a couple of weeks, even been sharp with poor Tom, who was so blameless. Can you imagine how Tom must feel now? Can you imagine how much worse it must be for him? I looked up at Ralph, and it came flooding in the realization of quite what I'd done to Tom, quite how unspeakably awful I had been. I started crying, but this time I wasn't crying for myself. I was crying for him, my husband, my love, and I cried like I'd never cried in my life before. I was heartbroken that I'd broken his heart. Ralph took me gently in his arms and rocked me tenderly whilst I cried like a baby. As he held me, "I can't imagine what I can do, but I'll try," he whispered to me. "I just hope he thinks as much of you as I do. I would do anything, absolutely anything, to have just a glimmer of a chance to win Tom back. I'd fight against my need to go with other men, and I prayed to God that I could be strong enough to resist it, to have the willpower to say no. I'm not going to do that anymore, and I'd start straight away. Yes, I would, straight away. I'd tell Ralph to stop undoing the buttons of my blouse. I will. I'm determined I will. I'll tell him to stop immediately, right now. I mean it, right now, right now. I'll tell him to stop." I did it because I loved Tom. I stood up and went back home. I was still in my thoughts and feeling the pain. I desperately wanted to meet Tom. I tried, but I never found him. I tried to call, but his phone was off. 3 days later, I was at my mother's place. A man dressed in a suit came over and knocked on the door. I opened it, and the man asked if I was Mrs. Mary. I nodded. "You have been served," he said. He handed me the manila envelope and walked away. It was what I was dreading. I knew I lost Tom forever. It took 7 months. I fought the divorce, but he never gave in. Finally, the judge granted what Tom wanted. He never spoke to me. I tried to contact him many times after the divorce, but he never responded. I never married or dated again. As for Tom, I heard that he moved to a different state and is currently engaged to a school teacher. Well, life goes on. Unfortunately for me, it moved to a dark world. Thank you for watching. What would you do if you found out your partner was leading a double life? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this.